Boise during the workday having lunch. Suddenly dancers would arrive from 7 different directions, go for 3 minutes, and then disappear the way they'd come, leaving everybody in town going, what the hell was that? When they launched their first performance, they did it not at the theater downtown, even though there was one, but they did it at a drive-in movie theater. They told their audience to tailgate and drink beer as they danced, and they began the performance not with a dance piece, but with a documentary film they'd shot. A film that was not about Trey, that was not about the dancers, but a film in which every member of the dance company stepped into the camera and said, "This is why I love Boise." A reversal of the expectation and dynamic that had the audience eating out of the palm of their hand before they danced their very first step. When it came time to launch their first gala, rather than divide the community around resources, they united them. And they extended an invitation to any visual artist to create an artwork relevant to the theme of the season. An artwork that would then be sold at auction, with the dance company keeping only a fraction of the total proceeds and the visual artist taking the most. They offered dance classes and worked with the local Basque community, which is significant in Boise, making work for and with that Basque community to be presented on large. In my favorite earned income revenue stream, they went to the local high-end bar. If you've ever been to Boise, you know there's one bar where all the drinks are, it's like basil-infused vodka, and the bartender calls himself a mixologist, and it's that bar. I'm sure there's probably one here too. And they convinced the bartender to make a different signature drink, each one named for a different member of the dance company. Brilliantly, everybody in town knew every dancer by name within 2 or 3 weeks because of the drink menu. It became an event to drink your way through the company. On my visit to Boise when I was there, I got through a John Michael and a Trey, and I was on the floor. But it's an event to do it all, and half of the price of every drink sold went back to the dance company. Most important of everything they did, they never talked about an arts agenda. They talked about a civic agenda. They said, we are going to make Boise the world's center of innovation, a mission that was shared and led by 4 people. The CEO of a .com based in Boise, the sheriff, the football coach at the University of Idaho, and that's a big powerhouse football team, and John Michael Schurt, the managing director of Trey McIntyre Project and one of the lead dancers. Under this logic about innovation, and they've written a great book called Wise Beyond Your Field about collaborating across sectors. In this logic, they convinced the city to fund them not with Arts Council funding, but with economic development funding. And indeed, as they went on the world tour, they would take businessmen with them to Shanghai and Manila and New York and other places and say, boy, you think you know Boise? This is Boise, as they introduced their business accompanist to their counterparts in these major cities. Not surprisingly, within 3 years of their arrival, they arrived at the airport to find the city, unasked for, had put a huge banner over the airport as they got ready to board the plane that said, "Good luck, Trey McIntyre Project, Boise's cultural economic ambassadors to the world." And most interesting, last summer, after they arranged for all of their dancers to audition for other companies worldwide, and after they negotiated free college educations for any member of the dance company who wanted one at the University of Idaho, Trey McIntyre Project danced its last performance. A moment that came not out of economic duress, and in fact, within 3 years, they were one of the 5 largest modern dance companies in the United States, and they were based in Boise, Idaho. But they stopped because Trey said, "I'm done. My interests are elsewhere. I'm interested in film. I'm interested in media. I'm not interested in choreography for a dance company." And I always called it the Trey McIntyre Project. I never called it the Trey McIntyre Company, because I always knew that this would be an ephemeral organization with no desire to institutionalize, a pattern of artistic enterprise that I think we're going to hear more of in the future. Now, if in all of this you think I'm saying it's over for museums and established theater companies and established festivals, let me be very clear. The Religious Reformation did not mean the end of the Catholic Church. A church that continues to be profoundly meaningful to millions worldwide. I think the best of our cultural institutions, as they continue to provide meaning to their citizens, communities, and if you want to call them audiences, will continue to thrive and flourish. And God bless, we need to nurture museums and festivals and theaters as we have known them. They are our best shot of lives of economic dignity for artists. I don't mean opulence, I mean just dignity. And they are the place where artists who want to work at a certain scale need to work. But at the same time, I would suggest there will be fewer of these institutions with the passage of time, and their command of the philanthropic support system will be less and less the lion's share. And so I think anyone in an arts organization needs to ask the following questions. What if our mission really is not to produce performances, but is social orchestration, in which the performance is a piece, but only a piece of what we're called to do? What if our role isn't necessarily to provide products to be consumed, but to provide experiences that will be springboards to our audience's own creativity? What will we do differently if we stopped thinking of ourselves as self-contained theaters or museums or dance companies and thought of ourselves as platforms designed to aggregate narrative or visual or moving energies? If we can really think our way through these questions, I think we'll move beyond an arts reformation and into an arts renaissance. A renaissance, which fundamentally means a renegotiation of old ideas to reach a new consensual reality. Now, for those of you in the field, financing this is going to be really hard. Indeed, monetizing the arts in a technological age is a puzzle that nobody has figured out to the best of my knowledge. Even the Metropolitan Opera, which is the most visible institution embracing technology with their cinema broadcasts, is now extraordinarily invading its endowment, and they're pledging their artworks, including those Chagall's, as collateral against loans they're taking, even as their live audience is eroding at an alarming rate. And as I've said before, online giving is growing exponentially. It grew more than 250% last year alone and is now 7% of giving. And in the UK, they estimate that by the year 2018, online giving will be £16.8 billion, which is a 600% growth in a 5-year period. But all of this aside, I think what we need to think about in technology is not a threat, but to look at technology as a new way to make it easy for people to love us, even while it empowers them to circulate and share their involvement and their love for us with others. And our real ability is going to be typified if we can move beyond looking at digital as a tool. Digital as a tool for me means we used to market on the newspaper, now we'll market online. We used to raise money through a hard mail campaign, now we'll raise money online. Can we move from digital as a tool to a digital mindset, recognizing new patterns of behavior will arise from the new ways we live in a digital age? For those of you in fundraising, you may know these examples, but digital-minded fundraisers have given us the Charity Alarm Clock, which is an app which sets up an automatic transfer of funds from your bank account to a charity of your choice every time you hit the snooze button on your alarm clock in the morning. You may know Charity Miles, which allows exercisers to set personal goals that are measured by wristbands that measure their physical well-being and that unlock charitable contributions from donors who have pledged to them every time a personal goal is reached. You may know my personal favorite, Feedy, which is a contribution to feed starving children in South Africa that is made by participating restaurants in the United States. Every time a customer takes a picture of their meal and posts it on Facebook, the restaurant contributes in the wake of the selfie. These technologies are not driven by how to transfer our old thinking into a new domain. They recognize that there is new behavior that will spring from the new ways we live. They are growing out of a unique and different logic, a different rationale, a different rhythm, and a different way of living than my generation was raised to live. And as with most shifts in this what's the word I want? Interstitial moment, thank you. The road ahead is going to be a time of both and. A time when, yes, you need to expand into this online fundraising, and yes, you still need to keep doing your hard mail campaign. Yes, you need to market online, and yes, you still need to market in the newspaper, and more and more. But in both cases, the values that will serve you well are clarity of brand, strength of narrative, power of emotion, specificity of need, and careful articulation of the ask. And in the age of circulation, these new methods will not only produce results from our donors and allegiance friends, they will produce enthusiasm from a wider and wider circle of people that we would never even begin to know how to reach. In short, this chapter is going to be exhausting, confusing, disorienting, depressing, thrilling, and transformative. So let me close and move us to Q&A with just a general observation about why we should worry about doing this at all. You know, I've been pondering Peter Coleman's book, The 5%, which is a book about intractable problems. Peter Coleman basically says 5% of problems that we face as a society get to a point of intractability. We can't find our way out. The Middle East is an intractable problem. We're stuck in the Middle East. We can't get out. We are stuck in this country on abortion rights and can't get out. We are stuck in this country about gun rights and more. And Coleman suggests that all intractable problems share three things at heart. Number one, the participants operate in a competitive, winner-take-all, win-lose, if I give, I lose, so I'm getting everything I want or nothing. Number two, issues are oversimplified to sound bites and digestible moments. And number three, people surround themselves with self-reinforcing feedback loops that reinforce their initial point of view no matter what has been said in the interim. As apt a cumulative description of the Congress of the United States as any as I have heard. And I say this especially today, I hope I don't offend someone, but when we are at a moment now where 47 senators sign a letter to a foreign power to try to dismantle a treaty before it has been arranged, we are at a deeply, deeply dysfunctional and divided moment. I don't care which side of the aisle you sit on. Let me just suggest to you, though, the arts offer us a viable alternative to intractability. Instead of competition, we stand for cooperation. It's how the work is made. Instead of oversimplification, we stand for shades of gray, nuance, depth of expression, and more. And at our best, at our very best, instead of surrounding ourselves with reinforcing feedback loops, we gather people not like each other to look at their fellow human being with generosity and curiosity. God knows if we have ever needed that capacity in human history, we need it now. In that light, working in the arts and supporting the arts is a form of social activism. And in that light, I would like to thank you all for your part as social activists. Whether you're here tonight because you work in the field, you support the field, regardless of which organization or discipline you serve. I would like to promise you that the hands of the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation are extended to you in friendship, both now and for years to come. And I'd like to thank you for your kindness and your patience in listening to me this evening. Thank you and God bless. Is that okay? Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great.
Thank you. It's like Monty Hall. You're going to do Let's Make a Deal. Take door number 2. I know the students have no earthly idea what I'm talking about.
All right,
There was a game show.
We have some time for some questions. Go ahead.
Before
sorry.
you ask the question, may I just ask, because I don't assume everybody knows everybody else, would you just tell us who you are, so tell us your name, and if you're with an arts organization, either as a board member or supporter or as a worker, would you just tell us what that organization is so we can
Certainly.
appreciate it?
My name's Tracy Strand, and I've been here for 7 weeks. I'm the new Chief Marketing Officer for SPAC. Just a quick question. Is this available so we can watch this again? Did you tape this?
We are taping it. We
The
can talk.
most masochistic question of the night.
Thank you.
most of you would rather have a stick in the eye. Apparently, it has been filmed, and you'll.
Yes, we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Another question. Good.
Yes. I'm Tom Lloyd from Adirondack Studios. I've been in the arts for 50 years or more,
Mazel tov.
profitable and non-profitable. And first of all, I want to know, where do we think the 95% of the United States public is going to regain its appreciation for the arts? And secondly, where do we think that the arts administrators that we're sitting with here in this room are going to become the next impresarios that carry the arts into the future?
Okay. Did everybody in the back hear those two questions? Okay, good. Just double checking because he didn't have the mic. To the first question about the public, I'm going to take a very controversial stand on this for a minute, so please bear with me. I could take the position that people in this country are insane about the arts. People in this country are rabid, obsessed, inseparable from the arts. I can't get on a subway car without seeing 20 people listening to music in their iPods. I can't walk down the street without seeing bands of kids dancing on street corners. I can run it out. The real question is that I think we get to a different sort of explanation if we move away from the question about how do we get people to love the arts. Maybe they love the arts, maybe they just don't like our arts. And that's a very different question. So A, the framing of the question. Now, one of the things that we're about to publish in 2 weeks, so stay tuned. Do you all know what public will building campaigns are? Public will building campaigns are campaigns that are designed to move something from a short-term strategic win to a long-term expectation. And the way public will campaigns work is rather than thinking about what do the professionals or the stakeholders want people to understand, they look at what do people who are vested in that issue value at heart? How do we account for their allegiance to that issue? In most recent terms, the public will people have talked about, for example, because this is very, very new, the issue of gay marriage, which originally was framed in a short-term advocacy win as get the government out of the bedroom. Some of you may remember this. They said, that's a really bad frame. It's you want the government. You want the government in the workplace telling people they can't discriminate. You want the government saying you can get married. You do not say get the government out of the bedroom and then turn around and say, oh, but bring them in here. But then they began to do research among people other than gay people who wanted to get married and said, basically, why do you think this is an important issue? What's your stake in this? And overwhelmingly, the primary value they identified was fairness. And if you look at the coverage over gay marriage in the last 5 years, we've moved from special rights to equal rights. We've moved away from, and this whole transformation has been about how do we build on the values that people already hold rather than try to convey our point of view to a disinterested public. We've just finished a preliminary literature research around the arts and what it would take to build a public will campaign on the arts. And we're about to publish it. And without, this part will not get leaked. I will just give you a few big headlines that I'm really struck with. Number one, the big value is socializing and connecting. People love to go to the arts because it connects them to themselves and to other people. And the second and third values are health and well-being, and the third one is around faith and spirituality. Second thing is the word art is a disconnector. When you say the word art in this forum, people hear that as that's something those people do. When you talk about creative expression or creative expressivity, they see a continuum in which they have a stake and they embrace the artist who is at the other end who does it for a living, but they see a continuum in which they are invested. Yeah, so that's just a different way about how we think about these things. And number three, and this is the thing that makes me the happiest of all, the people who are most passionate about the value of this in our country are people under 40 and people of color. And boy, this is who we're becoming. And the world could be our oyster if we were able to think about how do we build on the values that people already hold rather than trying to convince them that we hold a certain key that they don't connect with. Now, all of that said, they're the first to say there are certain arguments you will have that are relevant. They said don't stop talking about economic leverage to lawmakers because they want to hear your economic impact. Don't give that up. It's a kind of both-and moment. But you ask the public who cares about the arts, Economic leverage is not even on the chart of respondents. And that's not surprising. Who in this audience has ever said, honey, if we go to the theater tonight, it will leverage $5 to $7 additional dollars for our local economy, and our kids will do 160 point higher on their SATs. It's not why we go. And so this public will, I'm hopeful, will lead us into a new chapter, just as it already has done in gay marriage. The environmentalists talk about moving from watersheds and water tables to expecting clean drinking water. We may be on the verge of having creativity and supported creativity as an expectation, not an issue, I hope. In terms of where the impresarios are going to come from, I think there's a sort of twofold answer to this one as well. Number one is I think that impresarios are going to behave in a new way that I'm the first to say I don't understand, and I don't know what it's going to look like. I just know it's going to be different. But there are now some interesting programs. One of the programs we funded is a thing called ICPP, which is the Institute for Curatorial Practice in Performance. Arts exhibit, you know how to curate an exhibit. People in the performing arts if you know how to curate a season, you learned it in the job. Nobody taught you how to do that. Now we're beginning to train impresarios to think curatorially around how to think about work, and some interesting models are developing around organizations like MAP, which is 2 Ps, not MAP with 1, because that's a different organization. MAP, which is an organization, looks at identifying and cultivating artists more like a film studio looks at supporting independent projects rather than a traditional arc of we're going to produce a season. So the models are changing. The people that are training are beginning to move in that direction. There's some ferment around it. I don't know what it's going to look like. That's a very long answer. I promise I'll be shorter, unless I've bludgeoned you all into tireless submission. So,
Another question? Reese? Use the mic, Reese.
and you are?
Reese.
And you are from?
I'm from New York City, but I'm also one of David's students. But,
And isn't he an extraordinary professor?
Yeah, yeah.
Shouldn't the president of Skidmore double his salary?
Yeah.
Yes, oh, please, go ahead.
But I also work at a nonprofit film festival over the summer, Martha's Vineyard. But my question is, how blurred, you were talking about like the people listening to their iPod in the subway, how blurred do you think the line will be between arts, entertainment in like 10 years? And how do you think arts organizations will react to that?
Yeah, I trust everybody heard this. I'm the first to say, I don't see the issue of art and entertainment as being exclusive to one tax structure or another. There is a lot of fantastic work that gets produced in the commercial sphere, extraordinary works of art, and let's face it, there is a lot of crap that gets done in the nonprofit. You know, so the idea of we're the nonprofit, we hold the monopoly on real art, and we never do anything wrong, and the art, it's a false distinction. I think the real issue for me as I think about this more is how do we think about the artist's ability to travel back and forth from the nonprofit to the for-profit and back and forth as being porous? And how do we encourage that? That's a big attitude change. I'm going to speak from the theater field because that's my background. We have been very dismissive about people that find commercial success and people that go to movies and TV. Like they've betrayed our causes rather than celebrating, oh my God, you get a chance to write for this. Think of the hundreds of thousands of people you meet and you want to come back and work with us? Yahoo! Do I think any less of Tony Kushner, who wrote Angels in America because he also wrote Lincoln for Steven Spielberg? Not for 1 nanosecond. But our ability to celebrate rather than denigrate commercial success is going to be a big mind shift. And I'm the first to say, because I sit in a lot of grants panels, if you're too commercially successful and do well at the box office, it can lead to disregard by some of your colleagues who think you've betrayed the cause. So I think about it as being porous rather than divided by sector. The real question that's going up right now is there's some real questions that I'm not up to date on. Doris Duke's will is very specific that we can only give money to 501c3 organizations. So the will binds us. But there are new structures, L3C. There are some things in the UK being tested that allow you to essentially invest in a nonprofit enterprise, but some of the proceeds may go back in a financial return. So I think there's some porous movement right now in certain countries around tax structures that may make this change with time. And as I began by saying, I think there's an increasing challenge to the nonprofit sector right now that's really critical, but I don't know the answer to that. I think in the short term, what we do need to, here's a question. I mean, if Kickstarter, presumably you all know this, Kickstarter gave more money to the arts last year than the National Endowment for the Arts budget, just as an opener. But when we say that, what we don't often hear is, not all of those projects by any means were nonprofit projects. A lot of them were rap CDs or home movies. So we're putting things in front of people, not distinguishing what's for-profit and not for-profit. We need to have a serious conversation about, is that an important thing that people understand the difference? Maybe it's not. Maybe we're fine with that. If it is an important conversation, how are we going to get people aware? Do we have there used to be a thing called a good housekeeping seal, that an independent sort of tester, and there would be literally a seal on a label of floor wax or whatever that would let you know it had passed certain standards. Do we want to have a nonprofit seal in those kind of spaces? Is this even an opportunity to rebrand the whole sector? You know, those of us who work in the nonprofit have often said our real challenge is we're defined by negation. We are not for profit. It doesn't tell us what we're for. You know, is this the moment that we want to declare that we are the for social good sector, and the corporate world is the not for social good sector? I mean, think about how different our social values would be if that were the framework with which we looked at things. So there's some opportunity around this issue right now, but we're not having the conversation, and we need to get in front of that conversation. Otherwise, we're going to be the roadkill of that conversation in about 15 years. We have time for one more, I think, and you guys have been very generous with your time, so if there is one more.
One more question?
Hi, Justin Knutson from Proctor's. Do you think
I used to work for Target, so I love the for-profit. Please don't hear me. Yes, Target. I love Target. Okay, please.
Do you think the challenge in moving towards experiential content versus event content, do you think the challenge is of form, like what we're doing, versus content, what it's about?
Well, I've always thought form and content are inseparable. I mean, they're mutually informative. I think that the opportunity, and again, from the theatrical perspective, the two things I've always asked people to think about are, what are the things that you're offering people they can't get through technology? That has an aesthetic dimension. Please forgive me, that is going to insult some people. I'm not particularly drawn now to the kitchen sink play that looks like an episode of television. And I feel like I can get that on